Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the honor of speaking with Tony Bozzi, a retired Master Sergeant, E7 from the United States Air Force with 20 years of distinguished service. Tony's career in the Air Force saw him take on various critical roles as an aircraft fuel systems mechanic working on aircraft like the F-16, the A-10, the KC-135, the C-130J, and the CV-22 Osprey. His journey included leadership positions as Section Chief, Quality Assurance Inspector, and Technical Instructor, where he taught fuel systems courses to new airmen. Tony's dedication to service didn't stop at his technical expertise. He spent the last 3 years of his career as a first sergeant leading and mentoring over 1,000 enlisted personnel, ensuring their welfare, discipline, and readiness. His commitment to integrity, compassion, and support for his teammates was evident in every role he undertook. One pivotal moment in Tony's career was receiving a midnight call about a student who had suffered a severe injury. His swift action, compassionate support, and effective coordination ensured the student received his necessary care and could eventually continue his service. This incident exemplifies Tony's unwavering dedication to his comrades. After retiring in December of 2023, Tony embarked on a new journey in commercial real estate syndication, driven by his passion for creating thriving communities and making a positive impact. Leveraging his experience and Allegiant Giving SkillBridge program, Tony founded Diamond Shark Capital, focusing on building a portfolio of properties and helping others achieve financial freedom through real estate. Tony's core values, integrity, respect for people and community, and continuous self-improvement guide his personal and professional life. He's committed to his business goals and his family with aspirations to achieve financial freedom and travel the world. Join us as we delve into Tony's incredible journey, exploring his military experiences, challenges during his transition, and relentless pursuit of excellence in real estate. So let's dive in and warmly welcome Tony Bozzi, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran. Tony, brother, thank you so much for being here on this Memorial Day weekend. I really appreciate it, man.
Adam, likewise, brother. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for that awesome intro. That was really, really kind and really nicely put, so thank you.
Yeah, man, you earned that yourself. So all I did was just kind of put your stuff together in a nice little intro, man. But let's jump right in, dude. Tell everybody kind of where you grew up and what inspired you to join the Air Force.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C. My family kind of bounced around that Maryland, D.C., Virginia area. So, you know, a lot of city life, suburban kind of upbringing. Grew up single kid for the majority of my childhood, so I was spoiled rotten. Had family all around me. I was the first kid out of many to come within the family, but I just got spoiled rotten, man. So grew up really well, Northern Virginia, and you know, I joined. I'll kind of jump ahead a little bit. I joined the Air Force when I was 23 or 22, about to turn 23. So I had a little bit of growing up and a little bit of life to give right after high school, figuring things out. And one of the moments that triggered my thought to join the military was actually September 11th. I mean, I'm sure that that answer might pop up in a lot of folks' answers that joined around when I did. But I was actually working in Arlington, Virginia, probably a good 25 minutes down the road when everything started to happen on September 11th. And, you know, my coworker and my boss, we were pinstriping cars at the time, super random job of mine, one of many that I collected through the years, pinstriping cars at a body shop. But we're sitting here watching this terror and this horror unfold, and just feeling that immense pressure of what are we going to do? What can I do? What can I do? And I started noticing that I was thinking, what can I do? Because I, I was obviously broken and sickened like every other American from what happened that day. But I just didn't have a whole lot of drive. I didn't have a whole lot of a clear path ahead of me what I was going to do. And so when that spark ignited of needing to serve or needing to give back and protect the country and do what I can to make sure nothing like that ever happens again to our best ability, I realized that I need to serve. So that kind of landed, it went down a couple of paths, and I talked to a lot of family members. I have a couple prior Army family members, and you may or may not like this one, but an uncle of mine who was in the Army said he was a retired full bird colonel. He was like, I'm gonna tell you what service you're gonna join. You're gonna join the Air Force because of X, Y, and Z. He listed out all the things, and
No, man, for sure. I definitely agree with him. I tell people to this day, the first thing I tell them is join an ROTC program or go to a service academy, and then I tell them to go to the Air Force. Several reasons we could get into why I think that, but my sister and brother-in-law were both in the Air Force, and I just saw how much better their life was than mine. It's really that simple.
Right. I heard him, and I took a deep look at, because it gets beyond serving. You have to figure out what that means. What are you going to do when you serve, right? So where do you fit into that? And didn't grow up, firing guns. Didn't grow up with the love of guns. Didn't have that in my mind of like, I want to go do that. What I did grow up doing was working on cars. I always had a car broken down in the garage. I always had, out on my uncle's farm, a car that needed a new battery put in it, and he would let me go out there and mess around. So I had that. And when you look at the different services and kind of like what is the equivalent of working on a car, but something badass, I'm like fighter jets. I need to work on those. So that's kind of where it ultimately ended up going Air Force. And I don't regret a single day of it. I'm sure we would have been happy in serving in other ways too, but it's the route we chose, and I was super grateful I did. It changed our life.
That's awesome, man. So I imagine growing up in the DC area, there had to be a lot of influence for you in that regard, kind of because it's in your face, right? You've got all the memorials, you've got all the museums. I'm sure you probably grew up going at least and visited some of them. I mean, I grew up in Indiana, and then my first duty station was in Georgia, and then I was across the country in Washington. And I can't ever seem to plan a trip to DC, because usually money, but also just time. There's so much there I want to see. So am I right in thinking that growing up in the DC area really did probably have a lot of influence on you other than 9/11?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's not only the family members, my grandfather and my father both served in the Army. My uncle, like I said, mentioned as well. So a lot of family member influence, and a lot of respect put towards that. But also, growing up in Northern Virginia, I always was around all of the Civil War battlefields and, Manassas and Bull Run and all those areas. There's a lot of rich history there. And, maybe skipping forward a little bit in the story, I did have a moment in time when I was high school age that I was, just to put it lightly, I was a little bit of a shithead and needed to be straightened up. So I went to military school for a year and got a little
Okay.
taste. I got a taste.
Let's talk about that. I'm
Yeah,
curious, man.
yeah.
So you're a shithead. What did you do to get thrown into military school?
Listen, just breaking rules at school won't even go super, because it's almost embarrassing at this point. But like nothing outrageous that any other kid wouldn't have been doing at that time. Just dumb enough to be doing it at school, right?
I mean, it gets caught, right? Actions have consequences. You figured it out.
Lessons learned, right? And boy, did I get my butt turned around and get on the right track after a year of military school. But yeah, so I went to Massanutten Military Academy, and it was an eye-opening experience, and I got to learn about how to wake up and how to form up and how to march and wear a uniform properly, right? But the funny thing is, I left that experience going, I'm never joining the military. That was terrible. And but I do think that there's a piece of it that sunk into my subconscious that was like, you can do that. You already did it. You can thrive in that kind of environment. Because I did. I got straight A's. I was like the star student. I was doing great there. But I just wanted to be home. I didn't want to be told when to wake up and how to march to school. I wanted to go be free right? With all my
Yeah, that's typical teenage boy shit, right? Like, yeah. So you're a gearhead growing up, always had a car to work on. So naturally, it was just a good fit for you to go turn wrenches on airplanes.
yeah, that's exactly it.
And how was that challenge of learning airplane? Well, I guess first of all, break down the different, I guess, types of airplane mechanics there are, because I happen to be a pilot. I got my commercial license after I got out of the Army, because I thought that was my dream. Turns out I'm actually living my dream now, which is really cool. But I also didn't know there's so many different things within being an airplane mechanic, and I assume the Air Force is structured the same way. So if you wouldn't mind, can you kind of break that down for us and how you ended up landing on fuel systems?
Sure. Yeah. So the Air Force does segment us out by, we call them AFSCs, but MOSs, or insert, your specialty code here. Um, they do segment us and specialize us going in. There are some career fields that are a little more open general, such as crew chief, who the crew chief is the one that gets assigned to the aircraft, and their overall, day to day doing the pre-flight ops checks and things like that, checking fluids, making sure the overall aircraft health and safety is good. But someone like me, we get put into the specialized code, and we learn really just that code. I mean, I got coded as aircraft fuel systems while I was still in basic training. It was one of the many jobs that I chose to be accepted for. Um, and they made it sound super cool at MEPS. You're going to be in these giant tanks, and it's going to be awesome. And
Of course they did.
it, it
Yeah, they sure did.
but yeah, so I got to learn a very specific niche part of aircraft maintenance. But if you have your eyes open and you're working on a flight line for many years, you start learning how the others operate, what they do, and you have to know how everybody else's job plays together. So the more you stay in and progress, the more you learn. But it's not
Because you've got like airframe, you've got power plant, you've got avionics, right? I didn't know there was a fuel system. I think those are the big three for like the FAA ticket, like when you go as a civilian to school.
right. It may not be segmented that way in other services. I think, like, I know for the Marines, I think they're more of a jack of all trades maintenance guy, which is awesome because that sets them up for civilian life. If they want to go continue that path, to get A&P license, and you already have all these, certifications and specialties, it just sets you up. It was a little bit more of a hustle for the fuels, men and women, to get out and go do something like that, because you had to go learn all the other stuff that you kept kicking down the road to the other team. It's not us, it's a broken engine. Go fix that. So but it was a super rewarding job. I mean, you take a broken jet, fix it, and see it fly the next day. It's hard not to pull some pride out of that, right? Um, yeah. So it was a very cool job. Dirty though.
Yeah. So you said 9/11 was a big influence on you, and you were pinstriping in Arlington. Every time I hear the word Arlington, immediately the cemetery pops to my mind. I've got buddies buried there. I haven't been in a place emotionally where I can go there yet. So my first thought went like, you're working in Arlington, but you were pinstriping, and that's when 9/11 happened. So what was going through your head when you saw that?
Man, it's quite a while ago, Adam, to think. I mean, if I can probably just pinpoint the overall emotion, what I was thinking, I was honestly confused. So when I first saw the news video, me, naive, I was I was 20 at the time, because it took me a little while for that spark to turn into actually going and signing the papers. But at 20, I'm sitting there watching the first plane hit, and I'm thinking, what a terrible accident. How could this accident happen? And even as we learned the second plane hit the towers, my mind still couldn't click over somebody's doing this on purpose. Like, it just was hard to even get there. It took a few minutes. And then listening to all the guys around the shop, kind of talking about it, I'm like, holy crap, what is happening? Like, I don't even understand. How is this possible? Um, it was just heartbreak, tears. Like, I'm not a crier, but things like that will make you cry. It doesn't matter what kind of human you are. Um,
Yeah, man, I remember feeling a lot of those same things. I was 16, so I was a sophomore in high school, about to be a junior, and man, it was I remember them wheeling the old just tube TVs on the carts into the classroom, and I remember, that's before TV was as censored as it is. We couldn't show, like, you got to see the people jumping out of the World Trade Center, like that. And you're right, man, that elicits some kind of especially in a 16-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't equipped for that. I had no idea what was going on, because initially, like you, I thought, I was like, how could somebody be so careless? How do you miss the tallest buildings in New York City?
Yeah,
You got to see those.
you
But
your mind isn't equipped to go to automatically assume that somebody did that on purpose. It's just almost unfathomable, right? So
yeah, and little did I know what that was going to mean for our
all of us,
futures,
right?
right? Like, fuck, dude, your entire career at war.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
That's insane. So, what was your favorite airplane to work on?
My favorite airplane to work on has got to be the A-10. Just out of all of the inventory, I mean, the mission is badass. The plane is badass. It's really cool to work on. It's just a lot more maintenance friendly. I know there's some people out there that know my job are kicking the screen right now saying no, it's not. There are some parts that are pain in the butt, but overall, compared to an F-16 or something, the A-10 was a lot of fun.
Was that airplane really built around the gun?
I mean, I wasn't there when they engineered it, but it sure does look like it when you look at the real estate that's taken up on that aircraft just to support that big ass gun. But I mean, I love what I love about it is like talking to other service members and Army, Marine, and hearing, if we start talking about Air Force, we start talking about planes, it's always the A-10, always. For good
Or the
reason.
AC-130, right?
Right, or the C-130, right? But yeah, it doesn't get as cool of a hero story because it's like, I don't know. The A-10 seems like it's the one that comes in and saves people at like the worst moments.
Same right here. I've got stories of that thing coming in and saving my life, taking out tree lines so that we can, advance or whatever. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's nothing better than that Burt sound, right? Like it's great, man. You held several leadership positions, including a section chief, QA inspector, technical instructor. How do you think these roles shape your understanding of leadership and teamwork while you were going through your time as in the Air Force?
Yes, that's an interesting question. I think what it taught me and what I learned from that experience the most was how important it is to take care of your people. I know that's like boiled way down to the simplest form, but it truly was to me I felt like that was my calling and that was my role in leadership. I wasn't always the most strategic person. I wasn't always the most gung ho go Air Force military type minded person. I was like, I have this circle of people around me that I can influence and be part of, and I've seen what happens when supervisors and leadership are terrible to those people and life sucks for everybody and nothing good comes from it. It's not like the job gets done faster. I would argue that the job gets done worse, right? But what I learned is that I had this kind of knack for people wanting to come to me for help when they needed stuff, either like personal stuff or work related stuff. Something about my face or the invisible sign above my head said, come to me with your problems. And I just tried to embrace that instead of fighting it, because I just learned that that's just, I've got a friendly face, I'm nice to people, I'm genuine, I care about people, which is a rarity sometimes, it seems like. And yeah, so what I learned was just to embrace that and to try not to make people hate wanting to come work for me. As odd of a goal as that is, it's all about getting the stuff done that needs to get done. And there's times to be like, this is what's happening. I need you to go freaking do it right now. But all of them knew that when that light gets turned on for me, that it's like, oh shit, we got to go do that. And we'll find out the why and all the other stuff later. So
For sure. I relate to that so much. I had a sign, I think, that said professional problem solver, come to me with your problems. And I've said it on this show several times, no, compared to what I know now and the tools that I have now, I was a mediocre soldier my entire career, and I can go back and point out the things, that I could have done better that would have, progressed my career. But for a long time, and I felt like I didn't deserve that. You know what I mean? I didn't deserve to be that guy. Did you ever feel like that coming up through the ranks?
constantly, I mean, I think we're our worst critic, the imposter syndrome. It's in all of our DNA. It's there, and it's constant battle. Even today, even to this point today, where how much more do I need to prove to myself and the people around me that I can get stuff done and that we can do great things? But I still constantly feel like I don't deserve to be in that spot that I'm trying to head to. Not until I get this done, or not until I get this done. And it's just always kind of dangling the carrot. But yeah,
Yeah, I would argue that imposter syndrome becomes more prevalent the further you get into business. You know what I mean? Particularly, when you're first starting out, it's really bad, but then you level up a couple of times and then it starts to get bad again, and you're like, well, I thought we were over this. You know what I mean? Do you find that that's true too? Like it ebbs and flows, right? But it seems to have a new high every time you level up.
yeah, no, I agree. When you get a win, it's easy for that feeling to kind of like sneak away for a little bit. As soon as you get over that win and you've got the next battle, or you've got the next, chapter, the next thing that you need to get done to keep progressing, you're right there. It's just a skill that I'm still working on, that we have to learn how to combat and how to face it when it does pop up. Because you can use that stress, imposter syndrome, you can use all that to highlight things that will actually move you forward. But if you let it take over, I mean, it can really just completely block you from doing anything.
For sure. When did you know the Air Force was a career for you?
That's a good question. I want to say it was right around that 10-year mark where I was at odds that, I did the same thing everybody else does. I think everybody joins with the notion of, I'm going to do 4, I'm going to do 6, and I'm going to get I'm going to serve. I'm going to get myself kind of squared away, get on a path, and then I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to get out and go do some other job. And I signed on for a second enlistment because I didn't feel like I was there yet, and I was still loving what I was doing. And at the 10-year mark, you're faced with that crossroads of like, now I'm at that point where if I go any further, it's almost like, if I don't go to retirement, I know this is crazy. Look, knowing what we know now about what the civilian life can offer you if you're ready for it, or if you want to do that. But I just felt like I was on a good path and I didn't want to leave it yet. And I was actually in the backseat of the F-16 when I made that choice. It's odd as that was. I was on a TDY to Vegas. They took me on a incentive ride because we were there for 45 days, just fixing jets and turning and burning. And I was on a small list of folks that got to go in the back seat of one and go fly in the desert. And it was freaking awesome. It was just
I'm
like,
so jealous.
oh man, I don't mean it to make anybody jealous. I don't
No,
say
no, no,
it,
but that's like a dream, particularly because the Blue Angels just released some special on Netflix that I watched earlier this weekend, and it was fire, dude. I was like, this is amazing. I can only imagine. I also, like you, I joined for 6 years, kind of thinking like 6 years is a long enough time for me to know whether or not this is for me. And then I kind of knew it was a career for me when that first reenlistment came up at year 5. I was just like, well, we might as well just do another 6 because if I choose to get out, okay, I'm getting out at roughly 11 years at that point. Or, if I do decide to stay, then I've set myself up to maximize the number of reenlistments I can have before they make me in-def. And so I think I had a little bit of self-awareness about like what I was doing for my career pretty early on, but I also had some good mentors. Was there any thought like that for you?
Can you rephrase that question so I understand it?
Yeah, so like I chose to reenlist at 5 years on my second deployment because I knew if I reenlist now and I choose to get out, I didn't really lose that much more. I made a little bit more money. I would be in a better place, particularly because I would have had another deployment. But I also knew that I was setting myself up for success in my career had I chose to reenlist the second time, because I would still have one more reenlistment and an opportunity at bonus or to sell leave back before they made me indefinite. And in the Army, if you go in-def, that's the last reenlistment you get. And then, I've seen guys owe them like 9 years on an indefinite contract, which is crazy because they join like 2, then they reenlist for 3, then they reenlist for whatever, and then they're indefinite. So did you have any awareness about how that process worked,
Not
or were you just
really.
like,
No, not really. The indefinite option didn't come up till for the Air Force till later in my career. They reintroduced it. I think it was a thing a long time ago, and just like everything in the military, it just goes in a big circle. We try what's old again. But no, they brought that up later, and I definitely signed on for it to just make ease of. At that point, I was fully in. I was, E6, I think, at that point, and my family was growing, and we were happy. And again, didn't see any reason to turn any of that off. And we lived in Europe for a long time too. It's another. Um, we lived in Europe for almost 14 years consecutively, being stationed in Germany and England. I know that you want to throw tomatoes at me right now. A lot of people do that. I just had such a fortunate career assignment wise. I really did. I got lucky.
That's awesome, man. I did. I tried to get to Germany was where I wanted to go, and they wouldn't give it to me. And unfortunately, I just got stuck in two places my entire career before I got out. It's just the way it went. You know what I mean? Other than Iraq and Afghanistan, obviously. But how long did it take you to make first sergeant?
So first sergeant was a special selection from. I see you have to be E7 first. So I made E7, and as soon as you have E7 on for 12 months, you can apply for it. So I was right around there. I think I was a first sergeant for the last 3 years and some change in my career.
I love talking about this with guys who held the position. In the Army, it's an E8. And my goal when I came in was honestly just to make E7, and I would have been happy. That was like going to be the highlight of my career. And I didn't think I wanted to be a first sergeant until I ended up at Fort Lewis and I met First Sergeant Rob. And First Sergeant Rob ended up being the best mentor I ever had in the Army and really kind of reset that goal for me. So was it as rewarding as I think it probably was?
Yes, rewarding, taxing, demanding. I mean, just emotionally, physically, mentally, it was a lot, especially the size of the unit that I was attached to for the last bit of time there. And it was a training unit, so all the new airmen for basic training, learning what their new job is going to be, come to my schoolhouse, and there's at any given time in the summertime we had 600-700 students, young airmen, right? It's insane because you just look at the law of averages. There's a few people that slip through basic training that aren't quite ready for this, or they got through basic training but they're still not quite ready, and we got to do the extra basic training steps, and we have and military training leaders and a whole system to support that to make sure we get people squared away. But the amount of impact that I was able to have on that crowd of people, whether I'm talking to them before the weekend to try to give them some good parting words before they go do something crazy.
The safety brief, right?
Safety brief. Yeah, but I was trying to make it have fun with it. But getting the phone calls in the middle of the night hey, my family member back home is not doing well. I think that they may only have a day or two to live. Can I go home? And me having to get on the phone with the commander, and it's not just a clear cut, yes, go ahead. Like, we have to do a lot of work to get them, paused on their training. And, being able to be there and be that person to help facilitate all of that was super impactful. I mean, I still get messages to this day from young airmen that I helped in certain situations that are super thankful of that. And I left that job feeling pretty beat up and worn down. But when I reflect, now the dust is settled and I reflect back on it, super, super impactful, man. It was a really great job, great position for me.
I can only imagine. I'm sure it's taxing, but I'm sure the level of service to others that you're at in that position has to be so rewarding that all of that other stuff doesn't matter.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you shared a story about a student who suffered a pretty severe injury while you were a first sergeant. Would you mind going into that story and why you shared that and why that's important to you?
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind sharing that. And it's not a singular case either. I could probably think of a handful of others that were similar there, but this one I think was one of the latest ones that happened. And it went from getting that phone call and thinking I'm about to have to get on the phone with my commander and we're going to have to notify his family that he didn't make it, because that was the initial kind of word that I got, is that he's bleeding. I don't want to go super into detail about what everything happened. It's a little graphic. And also just like in case he happens to pop through and listen to this, but no names. But yeah, this person had got injured pretty badly, was bleeding terribly, and they got him to the hospital, and they weren't sure if he was going to make it or not. It was still too early. They called me. I was there at the hospital, like right at his bedside. as they were still working on them. And they didn't prepare me for what I was walking in there to go see. They were just like, we need you to come be with your airman, your person. So I walked back there, just hit with, you know, a level of like medical procedures and blood and everything going on that I just wasn't quite prepared for. But this kid, he was fighting for his life, and I owed him and his family to be there, to be by his side, because they're on the other side of the country, you know. But yeah, so we got through that night, and getting through all the phone calls and trying to talk to his family about what was going on with their son and their brother, and what things are going to look like for him in the near future, and trying to explain all that. And their English was not their first language either, so there was a bit of a language barrier too. And going through all of that, and then working, and then going on, switching on the mode of first sergeant. What can I do for this family besides talk to them on the phone and be a warm voice? I got with the base liaison office and got the family paid for to fly out. Everybody got to fly out, and they got them a room on base to stay. Like, they didn't have to worry about getting funds together, money. We had them covered for all of that, and just got them there the next day. I mean, the next day they were getting on a flight to come be there with their family member. Long story
Yeah,
short.
that speaks volumes about you as a first sergeant, because that doesn't really happen. Not at least what I saw in the Army ever. I mean, other than, of course, being on a deployment, where you're living together and the aid station's on the other side of the cop, right? Like, so somebody gets hurt, you're going in there. That's not a thing in the Army. And I don't necessarily think it's indicative of the leaders that we have. I just think it's indicative of all the red tape and the procedure and too many levels of bullshit you have to go through in order to get through that. So I want to commend you for that, because I think that speaks volumes about your character and who you are and were as a leader.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I can wrap that story up and just say, like, the happy ending was, like, we ultimately got him put on basically medical leave, flew him back to his family. He was back home in the state with his family, living there while he was being medically treated and going through therapy to get back on his feet. The whole time we're thinking he's not going to get return to service. The injury was too bad. And he went through his therapy, got returned back to duty, full service duty. And we were able to get him back into his training pipeline, get his career kicked back on. And him and his family were just so completely grateful for that. And I love that. I love the ending of that story, because I have so many stories that don't have nice endings like that, where we lost airmen, we lost members, we lost family members, and, things I'm sure that you can relate on. But when it ends with something like that, you want to cling on to those moments,
Yeah, man. Is he still in? Is he still serving?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's amazing. See, and that's the best part of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's awesome, man. So thinking about that story, all those situations, and reflecting on your career as a whole, is there a defining moment that stands out to you that significantly influenced your path and your personal growth?
A singular moment that influenced my path and my growth. Think on that one for a moment.
These are good ones, huh?
It is a good one. That's a really good question. Singular moment.
Just anything. The first thing that comes to your mind.
Well, I mean,
what was it?
The first day I immediately jumped to becoming a dad and becoming a father, because that's such a huge piece of who I am. So when I became a father at the halfway point of my career, if you wanted to find an excuse,
I'd say that's a pretty significant event in your career.
Event, absolutely, yeah. So my wife has been on this ride with me since the very beginning. I don't want to turn this into a love story, but she and I were dating when I left for basic training. We were dating a little bit, and then I think on the second or third day, I was like, I need to tell you that I'm also signed up to go join the Air Force any day. They might call me and tell me to leave. It's something you might need to know, once it got past the first couple of dates. And it was cool. He was like, okay, I'm really happy for you. It was more of like, I guess we'll just say goodbye. And she showed up to my basic training graduation with my family after writing me notes every day and all that stuff. And I was like, look at this one. I think she might be a keeper. So we kept dating after basic, and she ended up moving to the middle of nowhere, Clovis, New Mexico, my first duty assignment. She left DC to come to Clovis, New Mexico. If you've been there, you know how much of a sacrifice that it was for her.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
I haven't been there, but I can
the
imagine.
writing was on the wall that she's like, she loves me as much as I love her, and we're gonna make this thing real. So we ended up getting married, and when we were in Germany, we had our first kid. It was about the halfway point of my career. We had our son Alex, and he's born in Germany, and it just ignites some things in you and a person that you just I didn't know was there. You know,
And what are some of those things that you can think back on that it did ignite in you? Because this is, this is important. I know you said you don't want to turn it into a love story, but I think first of all, it's really important that you found someone to support you through the military life who is now standing by your side in business, because that's also not easy, right? So you have this level of support behind you, which is something I'm finding a lot of people don't have, myself included, right? I'm on my third wife. This one is it for sure. I know that, you know what I mean? But it took me to figure out, like, this life isn't for everybody. And I think the fact that she wrote you, countless letters while you're in basic training, that speaks volumes. But then I had a buddy I grew up with who worked on the Stealth, and I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this, but it was out in New Mexico, somewhere out there in the middle of nowhere. So I kind of understand what you're talking about, what she's giving up to leave DC to go to New Mexico. And so I think it's important to really hit on that. And so what was it about her and, having your first child that what was awakened in you?
it was just a deeper sense of purpose. A deeper sense of purpose that gave me drive to want to do better, to do more things, and to just go beyond just making it. I want to thrive. I want to do great things. I want to be a great example for my son. I want
There it
to live
is.
a life
That's what I was looking
right.
for.
Yeah. So we got there. We got there. I mean, that drives even to this day. I mean, building this business, there's a big chunk of this that's about showing what my son, what we can do when we put our minds to something, and building something from almost nothing. I want him to.
Yeah,
I don't want him to
setting
copy
the
me.
example
Right.
for what he can become if he just believes in himself, right? Like, look, dad is doing it. You can do this too, and this is how. Just kind of avoid those pitfalls that we all fall into. No, I think that's awesome, man. And you've only been out, so you retired December of 2023. So you're on month 6 of transition. And I think that's really good to really kind of segue into your transition. Let's start by what did the Air Force do to prepare you to get out, if anything?
So we all know the TAP program. We've been there, right? So the TAP program does its best to be just a machine of pumping information out, trying to get you access to the details or the services that you should know about, right? And I would say any program could probably be better, but the TAP. If I could go back and do it again, I would have went to it twice in a row and went to it a couple of years in a row. I only did the one. Um, it was helpful, but it wasn't enough for me.
It's like the bare minimum, I would say, and it was ACAP, Army Career Assistance Program, when I went through it. So SFL TAP is new to me, but it was, I don't know, my experience with it was everything was done online. You really just had to sign in to get credit for it. And then the only in-person thing I did was write a resume, and they're like, hey, good luck, use your GI Bill, get a degree, good luck on getting a career. And I'm kind of getting to the point here. It's, you went through a SkillBridge program, and that's kind of how I got my break and kind of informed a lot of, the strategic veteran and the business behind it. Because I got a chance to present my kind of philosophy on entrepreneurship being the path back to purpose to Allegiant Vets SkillBridge program. And so, had you heard any stories about how rough the transition can be? Are you paying attention to your airmen who are getting out, who are going through struggles, or are you too busy and focused on, other things and just excited to get out that you really hadn't considered what the transition is going to be like?
It didn't start to really. It didn't really get to the point where I knew about it. I knew how hard the struggle was or how hard the transition was until I got a little bit closer to the end of my career, and all of those really close coworkers, past coworkers, supervisors, mentors, whatever, when they started to transition out. And now we're having the conversation of they're talking about how hard this is and how unprepared they were for this is, which is you have to have a group. You got to have some friends. You got to have some people that you're reaching out to during that process, because it's tough to go alone in that. And you're right, like the military in general, they're not preparing us to just walk out the door and go be successful, right? The next day. That's just not happening. They throw a lot of resources at us. They do a lot of work. They build up the TAP program. Mine was in person, and I went to every extra thing that they offered to learn as much as I could, because this is a free resource. I'm going to take it, and I had the ability to do it at that time, but not everybody does. But yeah, I just felt like, if I was not talking to those folks that I knew had recently retired or separated and hadn't heard from them about getting ahead on life insurance, for example, right? Like this, I wasn't thinking about what am I going to do for life insurance afterwards. I was like, I can handle that later. And then I learned, no, you really should start doing that early and start looking at it early, so you don't have to go through this terrible underwriting, and then all the stuff that you're working through on your VA claim because you're leaving the military broken is going to come back and bite your ass when you go try to get life insurance. You know, it was just a lot of like learning little things like that, and not even getting into work and what I was going to do professionally.
Yeah, it's those little things, right? Like the little adulting. I call them adulting things, right? I had to learn how to get my own insurance because it's not something we think about when we're in the military. It's like go to sick call, you're fine, right? Or if something major happens, you just drive yourself to the hospital and you're taken care of. You don't have to worry about a bill or how am I going to get this paid for or whatever, right? Like what you were saying, the resources, they throw a ton of them at you, and I think oftentimes they're probably not doing the best job of explaining how to use the resources. Would you agree with that? Especially because almost a decade later you got out, right? I was out in 2015, so I know things have changed a ton since then. What were the main challenges that you faced other than life insurance? Were you excuse me, inundated with career opportunity? Were you shitting in your pants because you weren't getting any career opportunities and you didn't know what the fuck you were going to do to support your family? Because there is a gap between when you get VA money in retirement. When that last paycheck stops, it's like 60 days sometimes even 90 or longer, depending on how long they mess up paperwork before you start getting that paycheck again. So it's like, it's very stressful thinking about that, because for 20 years, the 1st and the 15th, you're getting paid. I think, I was that guy, 1st and 15th. I know before I came in, people chose to get paid once a month. I probably would have done that. Hindsight's 2020, because I've learned how to live like that through the VA money now. But are those some of the things that you were worried about?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's a little bit of self-induced problems too, because I knew that I wanted to create something of my own, and I had almost made it like a point where I'm not going to just go work for another company and be an employee. I'm fortunate enough to have a very successful wife who has her college education and is a civil service employee, so she's GS employee, and that followed us here to where we moved to. So we had that income. We had some rental property, the real estate stuff. So had some extra income from that. I knew what my retirement income would basically be. The big question mark would be in the VA and how all of that would pan out. And I made it a point to never bank on that being there. I've always looked at it as being, I need to learn how to survive as if that number is zero, because you never know. Because it's too easy for that decision to be made. Something changes, a law changes, who knows, right? So I've always kind of looked at that as being um, as a zero. But um, I had all those things going for me, and I knew that I wanted to build something of my own. But my plan that I had originally come up with, years in the making, was starting to fall apart while I was in transition. I don't know if it.
Well, then let's back up,
Yeah,
because if you knew you wanted to do your own thing, what was the catalyst that sparked the entrepreneurship thing for you? Did you get involved in real estate investing while you were in your career and just kind of had a knack for it, and you're like, oh, this is the way to freedom? Or was there somebody in your life that came through and was like, hey man, business is really cool, you should consider this, right?
I think so. oddly enough, the plan that was going into the last couple of years of my career, what Tony Bozzi was gonna become after the military, had nothing to do with real estate. Real estate was something that I was learning about, I had a hobby on, and it was like, I can see this as being a long term. I'll just keep building that portfolio up, and one day I'll have my path to financial freedom. But it was not my vehicle to get there. I was going to open up a food truck. That was my idea. I'm a food guy, so I was the first sergeant that's out there flipping burgers and like cooking on the weekend and bringing brisket and like doing all that stuff. I mean, I catered my own retirement ceremony of, 50, 60 people because I'm a maniac and I couldn't, they were like, let us cook for you. I'm like, nah, I can do
No,
it
I'll
right.
do it
I'm gonna do
myself.
it myself.
Yeah.
Let me just do this. And that's a whole nother nightmare story. We'll have to get into another day, like off the podcast, how that all went down. But yeah, man, I had it in my head that I wanted to create something, right? And in my mind, I was falling into, well, what do I love to do? I brew beer. That's one of my other hobbies. I like to make stuff. So if there's a recipe or food that takes a long time or it's got a real complicated process, that's I'm in. I just love the process, right? And I love doing giving something that makes people happy. So I was kind of like falling on that for a long time of getting myself to happiness because while I look back at the first sergeant role and say that all of it was positive and it was really impactful, it was tough. While I was going through it, I was taking huge hits on my own mental health, physical. I mean, I used to be the guy that runs around, runs 10Ks every single day, waving at you on the base, like running around, and then I just stopped running because I was too busy. I was too stressed out. Stopped going to the gym. I wasn't lifting weights anymore. It was like all the things that used to make me feel good and make me who I was, I stopped doing because I was dumping everything into everybody else. It's just
Yep.
the nature of it.
It's
Yeah,
it's so unfortunate because that's very much the fixed mindset of the military, right? You take care of Joe first, then you take care. Well, the mission is always first, then it's Joe, then it's several other military related things, and then maybe there's time for yourself. And I don't know. At least that's how I saw it. Is that kind of how you saw your whole career as
I
well?
can agree with that. Yeah, and I let that get a little bit too out of hand to the point where I was really just putting myself, down. I was pushing myself further down and down, and a lot of that is self induced. There was actions I could have taken and people I could have worked with to try to get lifted back up, but just couldn't see it at the time until it became like, holy crap, I need to get out of here. I mean, I'm done.
That's
I'm
because you
burnt
get
out.
so just yeah, you get so into the mission and that mindset of just "Well, I have to do this." Like whether you knew you could go get help over here and you say it's self induced. I really think it's kind of 50-50, right? Like yeah, 50% of it's on you, but the Air Force is going to have to take some ownership of this because this is the culture and the community that they've bred you to be in, and so that's just kind of the nature of the beast. I don't think any of us realize I'm in far better shape now than I ever was in the military, and it's to me it's mind-blowing because I hated getting up at 4:30 in the morning to be at 06 PT or whatever, and I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what was going on. The Army didn't do a very good job of saying PT is really for your mental health. Like it's to keep you sane. If it would have been presented to us differently, I think a lot more people would have gotten a lot more out of physical training. That's just my
Yeah, I
opinion.
agree with you. No, I mean going for a run is one of the best ways I can start my day. I know how powerful it is. If I go out for a short jog and just get my day started that way, I'm going to have a way more effective day. But when I don't do it, it seems like I'm sacrificing that to go do some. I need to get work done, so I just need to skip the run. But then you feel like crap and you don't get anything done. So just go for the damn run. That's what I tell myself. Just do it. I've got a gym in my garage, and I using it more and more these days. Need to use it more, but I don't want to make sure I get too lost off the track of that story where I was trying to go. The food thing, right? So like I had this plan in my mind to have this food truck, but as the dust started to settle and I truly looked at what that was going to take, what I started to notice more of is what I was carving out future time with my family and my loved ones, and I was going to be married to this new thing, which was going to be not the same job that I had, but very similar in the time away from my family that I had before, because it takes that type of dedication, especially in the food and services industry. If you're going to create something of your own and you're opening it and managing it and cooking and doing all that, dude, you're not leaving that place. And that's just the truth of it, right? Until it gets making enough revenue that you can hire a manager and start kind of being more in the background. But I didn't like that path. I saw taking the joy out of something that I loved and turning it into something that was going to take more time away from my family. And during the transition, when I started to feel what it felt like to actually get freedom, time freedom, I was like, holy crap, I can't get rid of this. So that's what kind of like triggered me from thinking food, still entrepreneurship. I want to build something. And I was already listening to every real estate podcast and reading all the books that I could. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I don't know if it's a good time to talk about that with Allegiant Vets.
We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there. So the main challenge was you had this idea for a business, and then you really realized how this business is not aligned with your core values and beliefs, right? And I think it's very important that we touch on that, because to make it through your transition, I know this because my transition took me basically 8 years, right? It took a plant medicine journey to snap me out of whatever deep, dark hole I was in and show me the path forward. But the big thing was living life based on your core values and beliefs. And that requires you to look in a mirror and really explore who you are as a person without the military, because so much, particularly I had 12 and a half, almost 13 years. You had 20 years. I joined at 17, you joined at 23. So in our entire adult lives, all we knew was the military, right? Like, especially, not to take anything away from you, but at least you had a few years, right? Because you were 23, you got a few years of civilian world life experience. I graduated, and 29 days later, like almost exactly a month to the day later, I'm at Fort Benning, Georgia at 30th AG for basic training, right? Like, there's no life experience for me. It's straight from high school to all the graduation parties to, oh fuck, I've got to be at the bus at the recruiting station this morning and I'm fucking hungover, right? Like that's how it went for me. And so my entire identity was wrapped up in the military, particularly as an infantry guy, right? With multiple combat deployments, extended combat deployments. And it's really easy to stay stuck in that. And so can you speak a little bit about how that part of the transition was for you?
Yeah. So let me try to rephrase that. Just the transition of being stuck.
Just the identity, your identity is wrapped up. I assume your identity is wrapped, at least mine was wrapped up in who I was.
Yeah, it still is.
You think it still is. And I think that's important, right?
Is.
Like, that's why we're having this conversation,
right,
because
I have to learn how to love that part, but also there's a piece of me that doesn't want to make that one portion of my life as my sole identity. I need to learn how to add and build off of that. And I don't feel bad about it, right? I just know right now that's where I come from. 2 decades of my life were spent in service to the nation and being in the Air Force, being military. And that brings a lot with it. It's not something you just wake up one day and you're not doing anymore. It's not reality. So I try to like leverage that experience and leverage that history and that part of my life without being leaning on it too much and being, this is the only way I can be successful. Right. Well, yeah. That was difficult to try to figure out where do I go from here, from this role that I'm in. And now I have this idea that I'm going to build my own business, but I've spent the past 20 years following orders and doing what somebody else is telling me to do. Now I have to be the one to give myself orders each day and, tell me when and where I'm going to be. And that's the tough part. It is.
it's so tough. I didn't realize how, for me, getting out was exciting, right? Like, I'm pretty bitter because I didn't end my career on my terms. The Army ended my career for me or whatever. And that's fine. I accept that and I'm over that. But at the time, I wasn't done being an infantryman. So I'm bitter and I'm pissed off, but I don't know anything else. Like, this is all I know. So I'm hanging on to that for dear life, but I'm over here in the civilian world trying X, Y, and Z, hanging on to that and constantly, I guess, just reaching to find what I had there in anything that I'm doing over here. And it's not till I started the business that I finally start feeling that again and realize like that is a part of who I am and always will be, but it doesn't have to define me, right? And it sounds like you've got a pretty good grasp on that right now. It's one day at a time, recognizing when you feel that way or start reaching back to that, it's reframing it like, yeah, that experience helps, but it's not going to help me now, right? And I think that's important. And I'm glad to hear that, you know, within 5-6 months of your transition, you're already latching onto that, because I think that's, you know, a crucial time in the transition, just having lived through it myself, where people fall further and further down because they keep reaching back to that and hanging on to that and they won't let go of it. And if you, the sooner you let go of that as your identity and start forming a new one, just day at a time, it doesn't have to be all at once, man, life changes for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I've noticed it has been a short amount of time, right? We retired December, and it's only been a couple of months, and I've felt that the you know, leaning on your veteran, on your service, and kind of highlighting the fact that you're a veteran is really, it's really apparent in a lot of business, all types of different industries, for good reason, because I think it lends like a certain amount of credibility or character to the person. If you don't know them and you know that they had a military, it does set you apart, because for a good reason, right? We all went through something that a lot of, or the majority of citizens in the U.S. would never do. And
Yeah, our first episode, Rich Mulder, he talks about that. He says being in the military gives you this immediate base of power, no matter what, and it's not to be wielded like a club. He says, right, but it is there for you to know that you can leverage it. And I think this may be the perfect segue into what you're doing with your life now. You know, wielding that power and the opportunity that it, genuinely wielding that power, not just wielding that power like, oh, I've got power, but using that power in a respectful manner, and the doors that it opens for you, you know, it's incredible. And so can you speak to a little bit about what doors have been open to you because of your military service, and kind of what you're doing now, and that opportunity that you got that kind of led to starting what you're doing now?
sure, it's interesting. I think part of it is, so when I talk about who I met and kind of how I linked up with the folks that got me down this path, they're veterans as well. So the guys who started the company that kind of opened my eyes to the business model that I've started, that I opened and that I'm working towards. They're both Air Force veterans. One retired, one had separated a little bit earlier. But you know, Air Force brotherhood. There, they were speaking the same language. They were telling me about this, you know, this type of real estate investing and how it works, and um, you know, just by the nature of me being a veteran and being in the Allegiant Vets program, it got us linked together, and that's what opened that door. So, I mean, it's a little bit about, you know, I want to applaud just like the brotherhood and the community, and them being able to open to reaching out and teaching others how to lift up their lives as well. But in the day to day of it, I have noticed that on LinkedIn. LinkedIn algorithms are not, you know, a measurement of success necessarily, but when I write a post and I talk in a genuine post about what I'm trying to do, but where I'm coming from, and I talk about my service and how I'm leveraging what I learned in the service, or what I did in the service, to now transition into commercial real estate, it gets a lot of traction. People are interested in that. They want to know more about that, or there's some trust, I think, that's there applied, where there's a lot of folks that may be trying to get in this business don't have that, and they may be harder for them to stand out. So
I think it's not only trust, but it's the fact that, you know, we develop high leverage skills that translate to business our entire careers, leadership, problem solving. I've been through this just about every episode with every guest, but because I believe it's true. And I think the reason that it is so palatable to take advice from you and your posts do well is because you're just teaching people how to use those high leverage skills and focus that energy on something that they may not have known existed.
mhm.
Do you agree with
Yeah,
that?
I agree with that. Yep. it's not a clear path, and those connections aren't automatically made by folks. I just pass on what I learn as I'm going through it. And that's the main thing that I can do on LinkedIn, social media, anything that I can put out there. I'm not the look at all the cool stuff I've built since I got out. I'm on the very ground floor of building a business and, getting it monetized and getting things started right now. But I think, hopefully that'll be just as helpful, to some of the listeners and people that are watching this podcast, as the folks that you have on here that have built a successful business, because you get to see a little bit about like what the beginning, all the churning at the beginning and how to get started. You get to hear about
Yeah,
that.
I've been, since we met, I've been following your stuff, and it's been awesome to watch just the progression just in the short time that we've known each other, and you've had some pretty big things happen in the short time that we've known each other. And I think that's amazing, man. So, talk about the SkillBridge program and how you got into it and what that's about, because I didn't know anything about this until, like I said, Thomas McKenzie from Allegiant Vets gave me the opportunity to do a Tuesday presentation to. It started with a group of like 1,400 in the big Zoom room, and then like of the breakout rooms, like 400 came over
Okay.
to me to hear me talk, and
Yeah.
I was like, "What the
It was
fuck?
not.
Like,
Yeah.
holy shit!"
That changed even during my time. So when I joined, it was much smaller. I think total 600-700 people, and then I just saw it climb every week for good reason though. So people find themselves there for a reason, because we want a program that's here to actually help assist us with the transition. They're not promising you a job at the end of it. They're not promising that you're going to walk away with a signed contract for a career. But what they are promising you is the ability to explore different avenues and educate yourself and to take control of your transition. And also the all the underlying stuff, the support. It's really like tap on steroids in some ways. Like they're giving us access to all these resources that can really, really, really strengthen your transition and leave you in a better place come.
Well, I think what immediately stood out to me about it was, the different career tracks that they have, right? And they have like a Salesforce, SDR roles. They've got UI, UX design, digital marketing. They've got, I think it's like a total of 12, at least when I talk to the group, 12 different paths, and they're setting you up with like Coursera and certifications and like actively giving you things to build up a resume, essentially, right? Instead of just having you write a resume based on, I don't know, have you ever tried to write a resume for an infantryman? It's not easy. There's not a lot you can put in there, right? And so I would have loved to have an opportunity to go to a program like this where I could have, like you said, just explored. And so you're in the program, you're loving it apparently, right? And that's when you started doing what you do now.
So I was in the program. I was already just on the real estate side of things. If listeners are not into real estate investing and stuff like that, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and you'll probably, if you listen to any real estate podcast and they start talking about what started, it's almost unanimous that people talk about this book as one of the things that helped turn on that light to explore real estate and just investing in general. And so I had already gone down that path. I knew real estate was something that I wanted to do because I saw the freedom that can be obtained from it if you really work hard and crack that nut and figure out how to expand your portfolio and take on more properties. I saw the benefit there, but I always just thought I just got to buy more single family homes. We got to save up till we can do the next down payment. Then, when we can leverage, get rid of some of the older debt to clear some of our debt to income ratio, let's go ahead and add another one. And it was just this slow kind of progression. And then I was at Allegiant Vets career. It was it was like a virtual career fair. And Sam and Jesse Sells, the two brothers I spoke about recently or previously, they own Wild Mountain Capital, Air Force veterans. They came in there and started talking about what they do, and I was just glued to the screen. Like the whole time they were talking, I was like, everything this guy is talking about is what I'm interested in and what I'm trying to do. So while he was still giving the briefing, I'm going to another tab and going to LinkedIn, and I'm messaging him directly. I loved what you were talking about today. and they were offering positions and offering jobs, and I wasn't even really thinking I need to go message this guy because I want one of his jobs. I'm like, I just want to talk to you more about what you do and how you started it, so I read.
Yeah, I want the knowledge
Right.
that's
Yeah.
in your head because
Yeah.
this is speaking my
Yeah.
language. Yeah.
Well, it was so fortunate for me, and I guess fortunate for him. He also happened to have a coaching program, but that's not, it wasn't done in a nefarious way, and he wasn't there tricking anybody to come to the coaching program. He's legitimately teaching people in the same situation that he was in when he was retired, of not having the best plan or the best exit strategy. And if you're an entrepreneur and you are willing to educate yourself and learn this process, you can build a just different version of the future than you ever thought was possible. Just not money, right? It's not like money is there. It's definitely a goal to be financially free and have wealth, but it's not like to collect crap. It's to offer my kids a better future and to not have to worry about what if the VA payments stop coming, or what if my wife needs to, I want to retire her, like, all that stuff. So they started talking about it, man. And I was just like, I'm in. So the moment I heard them talk about commercial real estate investing and this term syndication that they threw out, I was like, okay, let me learn about this. So I read some books, talked to them, eventually jumped on to their coaching program, and that was where the real fire got lit, that I can own my own company and start this myself.
So Diamond Sharp Capital was born out of the
Yeah,
SkillBridge
absolutely,
program.
100%. I mean, I would never miss an opportunity to thank Allegiant Vets for the program that they had, and for just the networking opportunities and the platform there. I know everybody doesn't walk away saying I'm going to be a business owner and this is my path, but they offer so much to all of us, and it's just, I can't thank them enough. It's really cool.
Dude, that's amazing. So take us through what Diamond Sharp Capital is, what you're doing, what syndication is. You have a fascinating business model, man, and I will be the first to tell you I'm probably going to have a ton of questions because I just don't understand it. My sister and brother-in-law, they started their real estate empire. I don't even know when. I think when they got married, they were gifted some condos, from what I understand. I don't know. They won't talk to me about it. I don't know why. It is what it is, but I know they own a lot of houses, so much so that my sister walked away as a major in the Air Force this past year, and she quit at 10 years. She would have been a general officer if she would have stayed in, and that's her path, and I'm proud of her for everything that she accomplished while she was in the Air Force. But she really did get out to run the books for her business, and I just don't understand it. Right? It's always been so daunting to me. Right? I understand. You buy a property. I did it at 21. I bought my first house in Savannah, Georgia. I paid $140,000 for a house. It was like a 3-2, 1,400 square feet. I was like, man, this is really cool. I can afford this. I was an E4 at the time. I was getting ready to go on my second deployment. And then what happened? 2008 happened. And that really, but I never really understood, like, how do you leverage debt and all of this? So I'm going to have questions, man. So as you go talking, I want to educate the audience as best we can on what it is that you do, how they can get involved, what that looks like, the capital it might take to do that, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to give you the floor, man, and I'll try and interject with
Yeah,
questions
please
when I
do,
have
because
them.
I got to remember, I've had my nose down in the books, and I've been in a coaching program for close to 10 months now at this point, and I'm learning this stuff every single day. Still learning so much. I know enough now to be dangerous to get started, but
Right.
but
Yeah.
I just want to. I'll keep it real high level and try to explain it in real basic terms, because I can get real nerdy and start quoting stuff that's not going to be real helpful for folks. And I'll just caveat, if I say anything in here that draws somebody to want to ask more questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Tony at Diamond Sharp Capital. Wherever you find me, you can reach out, and I'll pass you some resources and help out as much as I can. But yeah, so the nature of what we do is we buy real estate properties that really none of us have any business looking at on our own. We would never be able,
That's a great
we would never
start,
be able to
right?
afford them on our own. We're talking, if we're apartment buildings, even mobile home parks, that's kind of our asset class that we're going after right now. And there's some reasons tagged to that as well, underlying.
Like,
Uh,
why mobile home
well,
parks?
so I named my company Diamond Sharp Capital. The diamond sharp came from the heritage of the first sergeant, the diamond insignia on our rank, and the people focus. That's really it. Like the focus on people and community. So we want to make a lot of money. Not going to lie to anybody about that. We can make a lot of money while still doing good in the communities and making an impact on people. So my partner, I got to shout out my partner Jason Quadras as well. So we're 50-50 partners on this company. He's still active duty, by the way.
I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah,
Would he do the show?
I'll link you guys up for sure. Great guy. But yeah, we started this business. We same mindset, right? We were old fuels guys together. He transitioned to the dark side and went commissioned after a couple of years, but it's all right. I know, but no, good for him. But we were old work buddies, and we just realized we had this real estate thing together. So we wanted to make sure that if we're investing in real estate and we're investing in communities, that we need to make sure that what we're doing has a purpose deeper than trying to make great money for great money for our investors. Like that's a huge part of what we do. If we're not making our investors happy, we can't keep doing what we want to do. But the core of it, we need to make sure that we're making things better than we found it and making lives better than we found them if possible. So one of the best places to do that is in like arguably the last affordable housing option for Americans at this point in time, where the dollar's getting harder for people and bills are harder to pay. Affordable housing is super important, and our intention is not to go into these places and put a Starbucks and make it double their rent and make them get forced out of their homes. But we find places that have been neglected, owners that don't care. I won't say the name of the park, but there's one that I put an offer in on 2 weeks ago that's being managed by someone who's in China. And I'm not saying you can't manage something from overseas somewhere, but they haven't been managing this one properly. I'll tell you that. So there are people.
So the target for you is neglected mobile home parks, essentially. Is that what I'm to understand?
Neglected or mobile home parks that just need some renovations or value add. The neglected parks are better because that shows there's more room for us to go in there and there's a bigger impact to be made. And when you make a bigger impact, you're adding value to a place and you ultimately end up making more money doing that. So it really is, it could sound like an evil plan, but we're not doing this on the backs of anybody. We're doing this with investor money. Banks help fund a part of it. I'll get into kind of how the money comes pulled together here in a second. But yeah, I just wanted to answer that quickly, like why mobile home parks. It's just about the impact on people.
Well, to me, it makes a lot of sense, man. I'm not going to say where you're at, but we're in the same state anyway. And we're not in the same place in the state, but we are, relatively close. So I imagine, there's a lot of the same stuff around us. There are several mobile home parks around here in some beautiful places that are not beautiful themselves. So I see the mission behind it, right? Like putting some money into this is going to make you more money, but it's also going to make the community better, right? You're not going to have this giant mobile home park in the middle of the city that's just an eyesore because nobody wants to put any effort into taking care of it, right? And that's essentially a byproduct of what you guys are trying to do, right? But the money is the byproduct. It's the uplifting of the community and the kind of the beautification of these. Really, just you're giving people better neighborhoods to live in, is what it sounds
like. It's the term that we've kind of been giving it, and this is something that's big with the Wild Mountain Capital brothers as well. Is impact focused investing. If we're investing in something, you can go invest into a Class A 200 unit apartment building in Orlando, Florida, or Miami, Florida, and make money. You can make money doing that. But you're maybe changing out the marble countertops for gold-plated countertop. You're not changing anyone's lives there, and that's kind of the niche in the area that we want to put ourselves into. So I want to go to sleep at night knowing I made the world a better place in some way. If I'm doing it through real estate, then so be it. I think it's for me, it's the way to go. So Yeah.
Amen. Hey,
Yeah.
amen. I'm with you on that
Appreciate
one,
that.
man.
Yeah.
Anyway, the floor is still
Yeah.
yours, man, to keep
So yeah,
explaining.
let me
And
let me talk a little bit about how this process works because you look at say mobile home park, you can buy a mobile home park for maybe 1.5, $2 million. That's a lot of money, right? A lot of us don't aren't live sitting in homes that cost nearly half or a quarter of that. So how do you come up with the cash to go buy a $2 million asset if you don't have $2 million in the bank, or you don't have enough assets to get a bank to sign off on a loan for that? And so what we do is called syndication, and it's essentially boil it down to simple terms. It's just crowdfunding. So we are collecting investors' capital or investors' money. Once we find these deals, we'll find a mobile home park or a property that meets our criteria. That's a long list of criteria. We have underwriting that needs to get done, and we get real nerdy into Excel documents and doing the math to make sure that the numbers make sense. But then we go pitch this deal to investors, and I'm really oversimplifying this, but we pitch it. Investors want to come along. We usually will own these properties from the 5 to 10 year, 10 year being kind of like the longer side. It's usually 5 to 7 years that we would own an asset like this. That's long enough for us to go in, put some money, do some renovations, get a really good solid management there, get the quality of lives and everybody in that community kind of lifted up, and then on to the next project we would sell. And really the selling at the end of it is to because our investors need to be made whole again. They invested money, they need returns. Not everybody that invests with us is going to have that same drive to for impact necessarily. We hope that they do, but really they're investing because they have a lot of money sitting off to the side that they want to do something with, and we can grow it for them. So they're very passive. So our investors, they're not managing the asset. They're not dealing with tenants calling in the middle of the night complaining about toilets being broken and all that kind of stuff. They invest money. We send them reports. We send them updates. Communicate with them constantly as we are managing the asset and going through the business plan. But really, we're the active side, and they're the passive
so
side.
let's talk about the assets for a second, because the way I understood mobile home parks, and maybe I'm still right, and there's just different ways of doing it. I thought that traditionally you would own the land, and then people would oftentimes own their own trailer and then pay like lot fees. Is that correct?
It's the ideal scenario because it just cuts down the level of expense and risk that the ownership side would have. When we own all of the mobile homes, now we've got all of the maintenance on all the mobile homes, which mobile homes are they're cheaper homes for a reason. They depreciate quickly. Whether whether you live in a southern state where the sun's beating down or you got hurricanes, things happen. Weather beats these things up, and they just depreciate a lot faster than a typical home. So it's not ideal to own all of them as the park owner, but there are parks that are 100% park owned, and they're charging people rent to live in the home, and it's included to the lot rent would be included in that, so they pay like a total. And if you look at that, it should always be less than what you would charge for somebody to live in a typical apartment or like a standalone house. Obviously, right? It should be affordable, right?
Fuck, apartments are out of
They
control
are.
now.
Yeah.
Even I mean, we just bought a house here in September, and close to that number that you said, almost way too close to 500,000 for me. But even at that number that we bought the house at, my mortgage is still about what we were going to pay for a 2-bedroom apartment, and I'm like, this makes no sense to me. How is this? This is criminal. You know what I mean? And so with the mobile home parks, do you have some where people pay lot fees, or does this kind of model that you're using really only work if you own the entire park?
So I gotta come out and just say we are sitting on goose egg assets right now, other than our own portfolio. So I have my own single family homes. My partner has short term rental single family homes, and we officially launched the company in January, but since then it's all been just process building, learning, educating. We don't want to jump into a bad deal, but I
Well, I think this is important too, right? Because so much of business, before you can really I mean, honestly, before you're going to make any money, it's the systems you have in place to be able to handle what it's going to take to bring in the money. And so, I'm not mad at you for not having any assets. I mean, I'm not making any money either. In fact, I'm operating out of my own personal account and in the negative every month. And I'm fine with that, because really it's not about the money for me. It's about getting this in front of veterans and showing them that there's a better way, right? And that's really all I care about. The money's going to come later, and I think you're probably of the same
Absolutely.
philosophy: impact over
Yep.
everything, right?
The monetization has to happen so that we can continue to do what it is that we want to do, in bigger scales. And we, 100% plan on utilizing programs like, there's a program called the HUD-VASH program. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but it's VA assisted housing. It's a voucher program for VA veterans, right? So when we get to to the point where we own an asset and we have affordable housing available, and we can work with the local HUD-VASH program, you want to talk about something that's going to make you feel good at the end of the day. Is find a home for somebody who's a veteran struggling, can't get them on their feet and can't afford to live somewhere, and find a home for them and get them on their feet. Like, brother, come on. That's to me is enough drive. Like, yeah, I can have a Porsche sitting out front and that'll be cool for a month or two, but having impact and going to bed knowing that like real people are being benefited.
I relate to that 1,000%. I got a phone call the week before we dropped the first episode of the show. Somebody checked out my LinkedIn profile that I had served with and said, "Brother, I just tried to kill myself. I saw what you were doing and immediately knew I had to reach out." Right? Like, that's the whole point of why I created what I've created and why I will continue to do this. And I just think if you approach everything with that in mind, instead of, because I started with the notion that money was the why, and it's not, right? Like, the why is the difference that you're making in people's lives, I think. And you can't not have success if that's what drives you. And so I'm so glad to everybody I've talked to on this show obviously has kind of the same philosophy. Some don't know how to articulate it as well as others, but I think genuinely everybody's heart is in the same place. And I think that's something unique about why veterans are drawn to entrepreneurship, because we were all drawn to serve something bigger than ourselves. We all, I think, like to come up with reasons why. I used to say travel, or I was mad at my parents, but at the end of the day, looking back and reflecting, I just had to serve something bigger than myself, and I get to continue to do that now. And you're doing the same thing, and really, that's, if you approach business the right way, I think that is technically what being an entrepreneur is just being a servant leader to others.
I really like the way you put that. I hadn't really thought of it in that way. I hadn't taken the time to really break it apart, but that's interesting. And I have listened to a couple of the other episodes, but I didn't really pick up on that until you just said that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, well, I'm glad I could open your eyes a little bit to that. That's because I really do believe that, man. I mean, you know, we survive in the military because of our brothers and sisters to our left and right. It has nothing to do. I mean, it has a little bit to do with yourself, but being able to look to your left and right and seeing that everybody's going through the suck with you. You know what I mean? Like, that's really what it's about. So now I want to push myself further to make sure that they don't see me quit or whatever, right? And just serving others, serving everybody. The only difference this time is now I am selfish and do take care of myself. Kind of the oxygen mask analogy in an airplane, right? Like, put yours on so you can help everybody else. You've got to be right in order to help everybody else. And anyway, man, sorry, tangents, but continue on with the crowdfunding. I'm interested in that also. So when you guys are buying these or making offers on mobile home parks, is this hard money lending? Is this like owner, like I that's where I get tripped up, right? Like, because there's so many ways you can go pull a traditional loan. You got VA loans, you've got the HUD loans, you've got FHA loans, you've got all kinds of stuff, right? And then you hear people talk about hard money lenders, and that always scared me, right? Because the interest is always going to be higher, and now you're like bound to this dude or woman that's got lots of money and probably lots of power, and that's
Probably
like,
a baseball
I
bat
don't know.
for your knee.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah.
thinking like, am I getting involved with a mob
Could
here?
be.
Like this probably not.
It could be. That's the thing.
So
Like the hard money, private money lending, and all that stuff is real. They're allowed to do it. It's a little bit of Wild West to a certain degree because you can draw up terms and say whatever as long as both parties sign it. You know, there's some regulations and stuff, but I'll try to keep it to answer your question and make it. And to be honest, there are a lot of different ways to do this, and there are a lot of different types of lending. But I'll kind of explain it in I think the more simpler terms, and the ideal setup for this would be that we go to a property. It's they're selling it for $2 million. Let's not use seller financing or any of that stuff. Just say we're going to go to a bank and try to get a loan on this property. So when you go to a bank, just like with your home, right, single family home, when you go get a loan from a bank, VA loan or whatever, you typically have to come up with a down payment unless you're using your VA loan, right? So same thing on the commercial side. And I want to define commercial too, because that may not be a term that everybody understands. So commercial real estate is it could be office space, it could be industrial, it could be the strip malls down the street. The building that the Outback Steakhouse is in is probably owned by somebody else and leased to Outback, and that's a commercial property. But what I typically refer to in commercial property and what we're interested in more is the residential stuff. So commercial property is anything with 5 doors or more. So if an apartment building, if it's a quadplex that has 4 doors, that's still considered residential real estate. And there's different loan products for that. 5 doors and up, it's just classified as commercial. It could be a 5 unit apartment building, or it could be a 500 unit apartment building. It's still commercial. Um, and there's different loan products for that as well. Banks. So what banks do is they look at these commercial properties as businesses. So when I go get a loan on an apartment building, the bank wants to see, they're not looking at, well, what did that apartment building across the street sell for? And we'll base the value of this place off of that. And they'll look at that to a degree, but what they really do is they take 2 or 3 years of profit and loss and look at all the business operation and financial documents for this property, and how much money has it been bringing in? What have your expense ratios been? How much money are you going to? They look at, what they really pay attention to is, does this place make enough money for you to pay us our loan payment? They don't care how much our investors are making or how much money we get on the top of it. They just want to make sure that the debt will be able to be covered reasonably. So there's a ratio that they apply to that. But so the ideal thing is we would go to, we'd find a property that makes sense. The numbers look good. We would take it to a lender or a broker who can find us a lender for it. We would source the debt for it. And in the meantime, we've got to come up with all the money that we would need for a down payment, and all the money that we would potentially want to put into the place as renovation or construction. It's called capital expenditures, CapEx, but the money that we would want to use to renovate the place.
So, in the commercial side of things, when you're traditionally going to go to a bank, I know on the residential side, right, anything over, is it 640,000? I think is like what's considered a jumbo loan.
I don't know that term jumbo. That may just be something that I don't know about, because I'm by no means an expert at any of it. I'm still learning. I haven't heard jumbo the term, but I do know, like, the number that I stick to is 1 million. So if a loan is going to be 1 million or more, it's what's considered a non-recourse loan, which means you still have to have somebody sign on the loan that has the assets and the financial backing and experience to make the bank feel good with lending it. But they're not putting their house and their car and all of their assets on there. Whereas if you go with a loan, a property that's smaller, 1 million or less, then it's a recourse loan, and you do have to kind of tie some personal assets and things and real money to that, which is dangerous, right?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with jumbo loan. I just have a buddy who flies for Alaska, and they just bought a house in Oregon, like 1.1 million. And he was trying to walk me through the whole process of all of this while he offloaded his other house in Tennessee. And all the shit that he wasn't prepared to have to go through with this jumbo loan thing. I think it was a bigger down payment. I think the interest, there's something up with the interest too. I don't know. I don't, like I said, I'm ignorant in real estate. It doesn't get my blood going. Like, I understand it as a phenomenal asset to build wealth, and like, owning property is great because we're not making any more of it. Like, what we have is what we have. And don't get me wrong, there will be a time and a place when a lot of money just gets thrown at it. But then I'm just going to come to people like you who are smarter than I am that like
I
real
love it.
estate.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
of course. Yeah.
So for me, it's just like it's a pleasure to get to talk to somebody who is passionate about it, because then it helps me understand for the future, like, oh, I might need to go visit Tony real quick. Like, hey, buddy. So talk to us. Like, you said these numbers have to make sense. So can you give us kind of an idea of, what should a park that you're looking at getting into, like, what kind of numbers are you expecting that to do? Maybe just rough percentages of ROI or something like that. Is it like a traditional business where you want your margins to be between 20 and 30%, or can you shoot higher? Can you shoot like is it lower? These are the things that I'm curious about, because I really think that this helps us understand the core of what you do.
So it all based off of what's called net operating income. So how much money you get in rents subtracted from your expenses. Is exactly what the net operating income is going to be. So you take that number, and then from there you just have to figure out with that net operating income, we have to pay this debt. So we have this note that we have to pay. What's left after that? That money that gets left after that is going to be, there's going to be portioned off into reserves for the property. It's going to get portioned off to pay back investors. And oh, by the way, all the people that are working on this thing, like the property managers, our team, we still get paid. So there's fees and things assigned that the investors would be well aware of. We'd get it all in documents and paperwork to them. But as far as like expense ratios, we try to keep them in the 35 to 40% when we're underwriting for mobile home park. Multifamily properties are what I see a little bit like apartment buildings. When I say multifamily, I mean like apartment buildings. They're usually a little bit higher on the expense ratio. It's usually more expensive for a management team to run those. Mobile home parks is more, it's like mom and pop property managers, or even a resident that lives there that's super reliable, that has been doing it for years and doesn't mind being the go-to person for the people there. They're like the mobile home mom or dad, like they take that on, but it's generally not as expensive. So your expense.
I'm smiling because when you're talking about that mom and pop that lives there, the first thing that pops into my head is Trailer Park
Oh
Boys
yeah,
and Jim Leahy.
yeah.
I'm just like,
That
and
stuff is all
Barb.
too real. Yeah. So,
But sorry, man, I had to.
I grew up. I lived in one for a while when my dad was Army, and BH wasn't what BH is these days. We lived in a mobile home park for a couple years, and he lives in one to this day. My dad still.
Yeah, I was tromping around in them when I was growing up. I don't have anything against them. I kind of knew it wasn't someplace I
No,
wanted to live. But
are full of characters for sure. I mean, these are hardworking Americans, but when you have hardworking Americans mixed with people that are having struggles making ends meet and everything, you're going to get some characters. Like the guys I was working with had to kick, I don't know, Crossbow Henry, we'll call him. He was walking around the park with a crossbow looking for somebody. I don't know who he was looking for, but luckily they got him out of there. And just all kinds of stuff like that, man. It's just characters. But return wise, it's every deal is going to be a little bit different. And what we're looking at when we talk about underwriting and making the numbers make sense, we want to make sense. We want to make sure that one, that it's going to make enough money to pay the debt that we're going to have on it, and two, that there's going to be enough income generated that we can return that to investors and ultimately have them leave this deal with close to doubling their money as we can get, if not more. It depends on the deal. Sometimes it can be more. In 5 to 7 years, and we're talking about, these are typically $100,000 size investments. So it's not a little bit of money that people are throwing at these things. But in 5 to 7
I mean, to make 100,000 on your initial 100,000 in 5 to 7 years, I think that's pretty good
It
ROI,
is. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Like,
we're
I mean, I would do
two
that.
times equity multiple, and then there's all sorts of different measurements we can use that show kind of the velocity of the money. So if we have a short hold and there's a real high, velocity, like it's going to make money really quick. That's a real flashy number to throw out into investors, and it looks cool. But there's other plays where we do like long-term holds, and things have to mature longer. So it's real deal specific. Returns on investment. I mean, we look at what the market is offering, and we make sure that we're close to that. And if the property makes sense in that initial look, we'll throw an offer, and if it gets accepted, that's where the real analysis and digging, and that's where we're opening every single door to every single unit and getting a feel of what's really going on at the place. So we don't get our investors in a bad spot. We don't want any surprises.
Yeah, so I think the just here is that this is a long-term play, right? And I can see how this is going to work well, right? Like, let's just say you close and you get this deal you just put in on a couple of weeks ago. And, over the next 5 years before it's time to part, 5 to 7 years before it's time to part with that one, you do 5, 6 more deals. You just get this revolving door of exits on these properties. I see the potential here. This makes a lot of sense now. And, to part with, I mean, shit, you're probably making a lot more than $100,000, that you're giving back to your investor when you part with this thing. So, that's really cool to kind of thank you for painting that picture
Sure.
for me, because now I do
Okay,
understand
good,
it a little bit
good.
better.
Yeah, I try my
Um,
best to like just educate, because I'm not talking a whole lot about what we're doing, what what we've accomplished. I'm talking about what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. So just right now, I can just educate and try to paint the picture to everyone else that this exists, because we're not taught about this anywhere in school. My parents didn't know about this. It wasn't something that I grew up hearing people talk about. But this is a tool that wealthy people have used to get wealthier for for as long back as, yeah. I mean, people, they syndicate the Empire State Building. I mean, that's like that. All those big buildings are not owned by one rich person. But by far and large, they're not owned by one entity. They're multiple people and investors and everybody coming together to buy these places, and that's how they operate. We get to,
it's funny
yeah.
when
Sorry,
you
go ahead.
it's funny when no it's funny when you put it that way, because I remember when I lived in Washington State, you have the Tacoma Bridge that goes over the river to get over to Gig Harbor. It's a toll bridge. And I didn't find out for the longest time the state of California actually owns that bridge in Washington. And it's like, wait a second. How what? So a little bit of syndication going on there too, right? Like, where another state has invested in the bridge. It's been paid for years, but still all the toll money goes back to California. I'm like, it's really, really interesting how things work out there. So um obviously, you don't have any properties right now. You're only 5 months out of the Air Force, so I'm really impressed with where you're at now, and all the things, like I said, following you on LinkedIn and watching all the big announcements that you've announced over the last couple of weeks, and just seeing your progress has been awesome. But what are the biggest challenges that you're facing now with building Diamond Sharp Capital, and can you speak to why they're such big challenges for you?
Yeah, so lots of challenges in creating a business and building one from scratch. One, the experience. I wasn't taught a lot of what I need to know to be an entrepreneur. I can leverage a lot of skills as being a military leader, but there's a lot of real specific things that one should be paying attention to when you're building out a business, like how to learning about marketing and CR, like where all of your customers are going to be housed, like your CRM that you're going to use. This is not something that we ever need to worry about when we're fixing jets or fixing people in the military. So that, just learning all that stuff, and but really segmenting my time up so that I can focus on learning those things, but still keep the ball moving at the same time, because I can get inundated with the amount of things that I need to do and look at how hard all those things are going to be and just sit there and spin in a circle, right? Just stuck in that. Or I can do what's been most helpful for me is just wake up and say, what is the most impactful thing that I can do today that moves my business forward every day? Like I don't care if it's the same thing I said yesterday, but I say it again today. and I focus on that task and what is in the way to make that happen, right? And that's just been one of the things that's been helpful for me, but also difficult at the same time, is knowing what the heck I have to do to get the ball.
Yeah, I love that, man, because it really is like it sounds like to me we're experiencing a lot of the same challenges, right? For me, first and foremost, it's just with higher level problems, you lose the capacity to do as much work as you thought. So time management for me is a big issue. And by that I mean, meeting with guests, booking guests, recording guests, editing episodes, still running the back end of the business and the marketing, the emails, all that stuff that has to happen. Editing, right? Like that takes up a big chunk of time. I edited one right before we jumped on, right? That was my day before, we come in here. And then constantly not knowing what the hell you're supposed to be doing, right? And when I speak about that, people just want to laugh, but it's
It
really
is. I'm
true. Like
laughing because
you
I'm true with this. Yeah.
oftentimes, yeah, and you oftentimes you don't know more often than you do know. And and when you and oh, by the way, when you do learn something new that kind of unlocks something else for you, there's 15 other things that come with that you still don't know. So it's just like constant. And I relate to what you said so much because I want to learn so much all the time, but I have to shift that focus and really narrow my focus onto, like you said, that one task, usually every day. It's more than one task for me. But I do this thing, and I can show you. I mean, like my notepad, right? I got my notepad, still do it like I do in the Army with the little box so I can check things off. But I'll list everything that's on my mind in the morning when I sit down at my computer. And then I'll look at that list and I'll find the most important thing on that list that needs to be done, first. And that's the one I'll work on until it's done. And then I'll do the same thing again, look at that list again. Okay, what's the next most important thing? Do you have a system like that kind of helps keep you in
Absolutely.
line?
Yeah, I do the same thing. So I like to pinpoint or focus on what the most important thing is so that I know kind of my priorities are going to be aimed in the right place. But usually that one thing gets chunked down into there's things that need to be done in order for that goal. So that's when I'll write out. I have a little whiteboard. I don't think I can flip my monitor. I have a big whiteboard right over to my left that I jot down all of my stuff that I want to get done for the day. Personal, I have a side for Diamond Sharp, and I have a side for personal. If it's go get your butt in the gym and go lift some weights, then that'll be up there too, or something like that. Um, don't forget to call the termite company or some, dumb thing that I because I'm worried about business and nothing gets done at the house. So I got to make sure I keep all that stuff in check. But yeah, absolutely. I try my best to stay organized in that way. I am admittedly just by nature not an organized person. Like I'm not the guy that has this thing must sit right here. I would never turn this computer around and show you what the rest of my office looks like right now. But but I'm learning some processes that are helping me kind of perfect that, because I've learned that holds me back so much if I'm not.
For sure. And something else I find when I approach it that way, a lot of those little tasks that I would have written down too, they get accomplished through the process of accomplishing the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
important, bigger
definitely.
task. Do you
Yeah,
find that to be
yeah.
true too? You
Mhm.
like some days I'll be like knocking out this most important task and being like, man, I'm never going to get to the rest of the shit that was on my list. And then I figure out, I come back to my list. I'm like, well, I did that in this process and that too. And before I know it, I'm like, well, my day's over. This is cool. Right. Like surprise, you get some free time. How do you think your military experiences and values are guiding you in building Diamond Sharp?
I think I think it goes back to the conversation we had a little bit ago about just learning the my people focused, and where I drew a lot of passion of what I do from leading people and from helping people. And you know, I don't know what role I would have been in the civilian, like what the civilian counterpart of that would have been, where I would have realized that about myself, but I did, and I'm thankful for that. And that's really what's helped me narrow in, like, how do I take this business idea, because real estate on its own doesn't sound like a very, like, people live in homes, but it doesn't sound like you're serving people, right? But I think that we've really found a way to narrow our focus so that that can be the focus, and can be our mission. And I think that's I think that's what the military has prepared me for the most with this, is just how to genuinely take care of people and know what lengths I'm willing to go in order to do that.
I think that's amazing, man. I think particularly because you chose to do it in a space, excuse me, you're in a space that you said earlier in the show, and I agree with you. Veterans, particularly, especially guys like me who joined at 17, I didn't have anybody. My dad worked 2 jobs when he wasn't getting laid off because the economy was shit. My mom has always been a part-time worker. She's just not a big worker, right? Like always, whatever. And they don't teach you how money works. They don't teach you about assets and all this. And I think you're in such an important space because you're putting yourself in this position where now, particularly when this episode comes out, gets in front of your audience and my audience, and hopefully a bunch of other audiences, people can seek you out and you can give them that guidance and that education and really help them. And I think for me, that's so powerful. That's kind of a hidden agenda of this show, is I get to sit down with some very intelligent people who some charge for their time, and I get to basically get a master class in whatever their area of expertise is. And for me, it's so awesome because, yeah, a lot of this I can't use right now. I can't use anything that you're telling me right now, Tony. I feel bad about that. But what I can do is I can put it on this bookshelf right here, right? Or in my back pocket. And in 5 years, I can come to Tony Bozzi and I can be like, hey, Tony, like, would you like to do another episode of the podcast, kind of give an update? And oh, by the way, I've got a few $100,000 I'd like to invest with you. You know what I mean? Like, can you take care of me and make sure that I'm not going to get fucked, right? And I think that's incredible, man. And I can't wait to as these episodes come out, as your episode comes out. I've got another commercial real estate guy that I went to Peru with. He wants to come on the show and tell his story. He's just getting into the business. He does more of the commercial, like, office space stuff for like what's the damn math, Kumon, no, not storage, but like the Kumons and the grocery store, like that kind of stuff. He's out in Southern California doing it. And he's finally leaving his brokerage, starting his own commercial real estate gig or whatever, and he's super excited about it. But I think these are important, and this is kind of what the show is meant to showcase, is like there is so much out there in the way of opportunity for veterans in entrepreneurship that we're never taught about, and I heard it a lot, particularly after I presented to the SkillBridge. It's like, man, thank you for coming in here, being a genuine human, not trying to sell us anything, and just presenting us with another door that we didn't know could be opened. And I was like, man, like, that's a good idea right here. Like, I enjoy having conversations with people. I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn, whether I'm interested in it or not. Like, you've made me very interested in this now. I didn't understand it at first. And I think that's the power in what we're doing, what you're doing in particular. Your company is named Diamond Sharp Capital. That's a place that I'd want to go to learn about money. You know what I mean? And how money can work for me. And so I think that's awesome. And that being said, what are the long-term goals for Diamond Sharp Capital right now? I know you're just getting started. I know you're probably not thinking super, super long-term, particularly with like the life cycle of a deal being 5 to 7, maybe at most 10 years. But let's fast forward 10 years. Where do you see Diamond Sharp Capital?
10 years from now, our intention is to create something that's repeatable and sustainable, that we can either pass down to family members or pass down to the next, in 10 years time, I'm hoping that I've built the company up to a point where the processes are not necessarily automated, but they are able to be done without me sitting in the office, clicking the button, getting it done. I want to build the company out to the point where we've got assets under management. We've impacted lives. We've made a lot of money doing that. And now we get to invest into others that are, on the active side of real estate. Cause the most ideal situation is that you're a high income earner, making tons of money, happy with your job, and you have this additional income that you can place into investments, but not have to go through because it's a lot of hard work to own these things, to manage them properly, run the numbers. You're at the mercy of being sued by somebody trips and falls on the property. There's a lot of like risk and everything there. So 10 years time, my partner and I hope to be have built up a portfolio and built up enough process, and we've got enough to where we're paying employees that we could manage this thing without being the sole hands-on touch to every single avenue of the business that we are today. I don't want to be retired and not working for Diamond Sharp Capital in 10 years. I think in 10 years time, be pushing 55. That sounds like a good time to start looking at how much boats cost and what kind of fish am I going to go get today if I go get out on the water, um,
Make sure you give me a call because I'm
yeah,
with
yeah,
you.
100%. But that's like I don't think about that a whole lot, to be honest with you. Honestly, right now we're just in build mode, and we want to make sure that our processes make sense and that they're repeatable. So we're starting small. We're starting small with these parks, the 21 unit parks. So 21 mobile homes. You can go buy a park with 200-300 homes in it and be this massive thing. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us when we're still trying to learn the ins and outs of operations. And by the way, we're partnered with people, like we're working with those guys I mentioned earlier. Like we have them on our side, so we're not in the dark here. And I will just put another plug in. I'm sure it'll come up again, or you've talked about it probably with every guest so far, is just to have a circle, have a mentor, if not a mentor, have a group of folks that are operating in the space that you're operating in. Because there's really no sense in trying to do this stuff alone without having somebody that is either where you're trying to be and can teach you, or is on the same path that you can work together with.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, man. I think this is a perfect shameless plug for a project that I'm working on behind the scenes. Your episode's not going to come out until sometime in. I'd be lying if I told you when. It's not for a while, so I can say it now. But I'm working on a paid community called the Stronghold, for that exact reason right there. And the vision for the community is to get people in there like yourself, if you want to be in there, that can help all these wayward veterans, a place for them to congregate who are interested in entrepreneurship. I've partnered with two guys, a branding guy and an email marketing guy. There'll be eventually, a bunch of good courses in there. If you need some branding stuff and graphics done, you can go to my branding guy through the Slack channel and get some branding work done. If you need email sequences set up, helping them build their clientele and their business, they're helping me on the back end so I can focus on what I'm good at. But you're absolutely right, man. The overarching need in the veteran community is a community of like-minded people where you don't get all the bullshit, right? Like Facebook groups, I'm sorry, I hate to say it, they're fucking toxic. They're absolutely, I don't know. I went in there to make a post to try and get guests. I expected the worst. I did get several shitty comments, but I got an overwhelming number of people who were actually interested in helping me. So it kind of turned my mind around. But overall, any other, when I was in flight school, I was a part of a bunch of flight school groups on Facebook, and I'd ask a question, I'd immediately get shit on. And you won't get that in my community. In fact, in my community, everybody's going to be there to lift you up and to answer your questions to the best of their ability. And if they can't, you'll have this network of people that you can find the answer to. And I think it's going to be something beautiful, man. And I really came to the idea of building it because of talking to so many of you guys, and like, that's the one solid foundation that everybody that's building a business has, is a community of people who are like-minded, who aren't afraid to tell you when you're wrong and give you the hard feedback that you need, but that are also very, very solidly behind you and interested in your success. They're not hampering your success. They're driving it forward. Because I think, particularly if you're on LinkedIn, and I'm guilty of saying it too, the solopreneur movement is huge right now, and in building a personal brand. And yeah, a lot of work is done by yourself. It's lonely. There is a lot done by yourself, but every business gets to a point where you can no longer do it by yourself, and you have to get other people. And I'm in that weird transition right now, right? Like, not making any money, but still need help because I'm growing at a ridiculous rate. And it's like, you have to ask for that help, and you have to seek out those people that you can trust, that see your vision. And I'm just glad that you spoke on that, man, because I really do think it's that
Yeah, I
important.
appreciate that. Yeah, I think that idea sounds super rad. By the way, I'd love to be part of that and to take part in that, because you come up with these crazy ideas for entrepreneurship. I want to open a food truck, or I'm going to go invest. I'm going to buy a mobile home park, and you go to your family, hey mom, I'm going to go buy a mobile home park. She's like, she obviously didn't do that growing up, and she doesn't know the power that those kind of communities hold for wealth generation, cash flowing, and also the impact side. She just hears that's super random. I thought you were going to own a food truck. How did we get here? What is this? And you don't need to find a group of people that'll tell you what you want to hear. You just need to find a group of people that have found success, or in some way, can mirror what it is that you're trying to accomplish, so that you can get real life skills from them. Or, hey, we messed this up when we started. The Sales brothers are happy to share like mistakes they made early in their career to help us not make those mistakes. So I just want to be that person for somebody else one day soon. I would love to go back to Allegiant Vets and be like, hey, our company is rocking and rolling. I can't handle marketing anymore. I need a marketing person, or I need what I did. The investor relations. I worked for the Sales brothers for a while I was still getting my stuff built up. They hired me on as their investor relations person, and I answered all the questions from investors and sent out reports. And I want to.
And that's a good point, man, because I'm in a position where I don't have to have a job. I get to focus on this full time, right? But I very much structure my finances and sacrifice certain things in a way for do that. I could go get a part-time job right now and all that would change, you know what I mean? But I'm glad you touched on that. Because so many people are like, well, but Adam, I can't start a business because I don't have time. And it's like, well, bullshit. You have to make time. You really have to want it. And I think more to your point about the community is like, you can come to my community with an idea and you can run it by people and they can give you the pros and cons, and you might find something and get turned on to something like what you're doing and you didn't even know it, right? And also like understanding like this is a big challenge, and not everything is going to go the way that you think it's going to go, you know what I mean? Like oh yeah, man, no, it's so good. How did you get to your core values of integrity, respect for people, community, and continuous self-improvement, and how do you think that they kind of shape your approach to building your business?
I mean, I feel like I'm gonna sound like repeat, but it's like it really is like so important to me. I'm a people person at my heart. I'm one of those like if somebody's having a bad day and they get into my area, it doesn't bounce off me like it does for a lot of folks. I'll like internalize that stuff and try to help figure out how we can make things a little bit better for you if possible, right? I know that I'm not the solver of everybody's problems, but it's just in my nature to try to help people and to be focused on that. And if I'm not, then I'm fighting my own DNA and going against what it is that's important to me. So that's really it. And when I see that vision of my future and my company, and we've found success, what I see ultimately is just the sense of pride that we did something positive in the world and that we were helping people, because that's it. Yeah, that's really it. Um, it's not a sneaky way to get rich and famous. Like I don't want any of that. I just want to be happy and feel fulfilled and be a good role model for my kids.
Right. Any unconventional piece of advice that you would offer to veterans who are going to transition to civilian life and who are looking at being entrepreneurs?
Unconventional advice. Hmm. I would say pay little mind to that little thing on your shoulder that's telling you that you can't do this, or you're not ready for this, or because I was in the military, engaging in combat, that means I can't be a real estate investor, because who would invest with a guy that didn't work in real estate for the past 10, 20 years? Um, tell I would go ahead and just put that person on pause, shut them up for a bit, and really focus in on what it is that you're trying to do. And like what we just talked about with me and my focus on people, you have to find out. I know, and people are gonna get mad at me for saying this. I don't even know if I can say it a different way. It's so ingrained into my head. If you don't figure out the reason why it is that you're trying to do something, you're going to run out of motivation and gas and fuel to do it. And that little person that's telling you you can't do something is going to be right there ready to go to tell you, yeah, I was right. See, you can't do this. You're not smart enough. You don't have the experience, or you don't have the college education to back it up. Just tell that person to shut the fuck up and dig in and figure out, if I'm not saying every idea that you're going to have is a gold mine and that you should open a business for every idea, but you should explore them and not listen to the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome and everything else that tries to get in the way. I don't know if that's unconventional or not, but
No, that's spot on, man. And I know you don't like saying it, but it's so true. Like, you have to know the why. You really do. And the best example, and I know I'm talking a lot about myself and my experience, but I really think that's why people are here, to hear this and this dialogue. And for me, the best example I can give you is, you know what the hard days are for me? The hard days are when I don't have any guest meetings or any guest recordings. It's when I have to sit back and focus and make myself do the back end stuff, answering emails, setting up email automations, building lead magnets. I don't like any
you
of
are
that
so
shit. I
correct
hate
about
that
that.
shit.
Yeah, those are my least favorite days as well. When I can call a broker and ask, I'm trying to build a connection or build a relationship, or um, going to visit. We had another side project. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. We had another side project that had us in the city of Dayton, Ohio, sitting at the mayor's office, or in the town hall, economic development. All the city, movers and shakers were pitching this project to them. That stuff is awesome. Being out there on the ground, working a project. But when you got to do, yeah, all the background stuff, that's where the grit really comes in. You got to force through that stuff because nobody's doing it for you. You have to do it.
And like, when you look at it with what my why is, right? Like, my why is to show veterans the path back to purpose through entrepreneurship. And an even larger why, if you need it, is to stop the 22 a day. I got tired of picking up my phone to all the notifications. You're no stranger to that. You did 20 years in the Air Force. I'm sure multiple deployments, even though we didn't talk about any of them. And that is my why. And so getting out of bed and coming and sitting in front of my computer and talking to people, now that my LinkedIn has picked up and people know who I am, is way more fun. I used to hate the LinkedIn engagement part of it. It's way more fun now that I've got like an actual audience, I will say. However, plus, the connections, man, meeting people like you and getting to just talk to people, like, that's what fires me up. And I know that this is going to do some good. And you know how I know it's going to do some good? Because I have civilians coming to me saying, like, bro, this is amazing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you've got civilians listening to a show that was really written, and I wouldn't say written because I don't really write anything, but was tailored for veterans and to help veterans out of this dark place that we're in. That's so rewarding, man. And it's so much fun, and the days just fly by, right? Like, we've been doing this we just hit 2 hours. It's 5:30 on Memorial Day, and the whole day is now gone, but I don't feel like I've wasted any time. I've learned a ton from you. I've had a blast doing this. And, that's what I mean when I say, like, if you know what your why is, this is never work. This is so much fun. And it's all the other stuff that I don't like doing when I don't have meetings that is
Mm-hmm.
work.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, just that I'll try to incorporate that into those, because there's a lot of those days at the beginning of building a business where you're doing all the foundational stuff, your resources, your systems and processes, and setting all that up. I just try to focus more on what my why is and hold the reason behind needing to build that stuff, because it can be a little sour sometimes. You walk in here like, man, I don't feel like working on a website today. I'm not a website designer, but we have a website now, so it was worth it. It was worth all the work, but like in the process of it, that's just not where I thrive to be. But
Well, and it always takes 3 times longer than it probably should because you're constantly fighting yourself because you hate doing it. Versus, like, I sit down to record and 2 hours and 20 minutes is gone, and you're like, well, where the fuck did my day go?
I'm probably
like,
being a little bit of a baby, because we did have somebody developing the website for us, but he kudos to him. He was super interactive with us and wanted our input on a lot of the stuff going into the site, which I appreciate because it turned out great. But
Yeah, so much of that I can handle. I don't mind the back and forth. Like, so I have a philosophy when I put anybody on my team, it's very understood. I like to let creators create. So if you're a web guy, I am not going to tell you how to build my website. I'm going to ask you to build my website in wireframe, and then I'm going to have you present it to me. We're going to have an hour and a half long discussion, however long it takes. Tell me what you were thinking on this. I'll either, most of the time, I'll agree with you. I might have a couple of suggestions of like, hey, can we do this? Had you thought about this? And you, oh, no, I didn't think about that. That's a really good idea. And you're sharpening my skills. Cool, right? That's the approach I take to finding people to take the shit off my plate I don't want to do. So I don't mind that back and forth. But if I had to sit there and build a website in Webflow or with fucking Elementor on WordPress, I would very much probably rip my hair out, and I don't really want
No,
to
you got
do
a nice
that.
head of hair.
So
Keep that up there as long as
I do, man. I'm so attached to this shit too. Like, I love it, man. How do you balance your personal development with your professional responsibilities as you move forward? Do you have a mindfulness practice? Do you meditate? I know you mentioned you have the gym in the garage. I also have a gym in the garage. Do you have like a set routine that you do?
I'm always working on it. I think that my routine right now is still a little bit of a churn from getting used to not having the Air Force routine and not having the military thing. I'm still struggling to get what my daily routine is, and I'm always trying to improve myself. I mean, we're our toughest critic. Like, I'm not running as much as I used to. I want to be able to run more miles. So I need to run more. So I need to get like a good routine where I'm doing it religiously, but I'm not right now. I'll get like sporadic moments of like getting out there, getting some good workouts in. I know how good it feels. I just need to get it all incorporated. But I do start my day in a very similar way, where I come in and before I power on my computer, I sit here with a cup of coffee and I just think through what needs to get done. And something that I'm going to be working on soon is something my coach taught me is to come up with like around 10 powerful statements that are designed to get over the lies that you tell yourself, such as like what we talked about earlier, like I'm not smart enough to do this job or I don't have the experience. What you do is you kind of come up with counter acting positive statements, words of affirmation, if you want to call it that. But they're true and they're supposed to be really specific as to who you are to make sure that you're putting yourself in the right mindset to become that person that you are working to become. So yeah, I'll share some stuff with you. I can share some stuff that puts it a little bit better than I'm able to explain it here. But
I'm picking up what you're putting down for sure because I just did two of these with some one who's still an active duty Navy commander and the other one is a retired Navy commander, and I always had this false assumption about myself, right? Because I think you might be able to relate to this as an enlisted guy. We look at those field grade officers primarily, so for me it was colonel and above when I was in the Army, and I don't know what the Air Force or Navy ranks really are. I know a commander is an O6, so that's field grade to me. But for me, I always those people you don't interact with as an enlisted guy ever. Like, and if you do, usually it's in a big formation and it's some kind of award ceremony or whatever. So you really don't talk to them. So I always had this false narrative in my head that I'm not smart enough or not good enough to hold my own in a conversation with these people. And I get them on my podcast and I'm asking them questions and they're having to pause, kind of like you were doing it. Like, man, that's a good question. I got to think about this. And it's like, it's so amazing to me to see what I'm capable of, particularly in the moment when you ask this person who, I don't know, you put on a pedestal or whatever. And I'm not saying it's right. It's just who I am. It's what I've done. Right. It's a part of me. And I get that response the first time. The whole rest of the conversation, I was like, all right, motherfucker, let's go. I got you now, because I've proven to myself that I can do something I didn't think I could do. And it's just the most amazing feeling when you unlock that for yourself. And so, man, I think that's spot on, man. I think we're about done here, buddy. We've talked about just about everything I had written down to talk to you. So, what do you want veterans to take away from our conversation here today, and what do you think is the most important thing that they kind of latch onto here from our conversation?
Yeah, just belief in your abilities, belief in what the lessons that you've learned don't just disappear when you take the uniform off. Um, your character, whether you like it or not, a piece of the service has become ingrained into who you are. It's just impossible. I don't care if it was 4 years or 20 years. Like, you have a piece of your character now that comes from service, and the rules and lessons and everything that you learned in there. Don't think that stuff's just going to disappear and toss that out. Learn how to leverage those things and empower yourself to believe that you can build something from nothing. If you have an idea or you have something that you want to create, you can. I'm not saying you'll be able to do it day one and separate and you'll own your own business on day two. Sometimes you have to have your own career and your own job, and you nightlife. You do that in your nightlife where you go work on your business and your idea, but keep pushing. Don't let yourself limit your belief and believe yourself that you're not able or capable of doing it, because you absolutely freaking literally are. If you made it through basic training and made it through service and left the service honorably, then you have what it takes. I'm a firm believer in that. I don't need to know any of you to know that that's true. And the importance of finding your next community. You're going to find a lot of your prior service people are, they're still friends and you'll still stay connected, but they're focused on what they're focused, and you're going to be building this thing. And a lot of times it's hard for them to even get it. So I'm kind of a nerd too. I still jump on Call of Duty and play video games every once in a while. Uh, so, but like I'll do that just to catch up and chat and talk to some of my buddies who get on there too, and I'm telling them what I'm doing, and it's just like it's hard for them to even fathom a life outside of the military, building a company because of what they're in. So
Yeah, I relate to that a ton. I'm not a big video game. I always played them just to hang out with my friends. That's why I played them. I'm terrible at them. And then my life is consumed with the podcast and everything, that's all I really consume anymore is just other people's podcasts to get better at what I do. But I hopped in the group chat earlier today to talk about that opportunity that I got. I won't mention it here since we're recording, but you know what I'm talking about. And they didn't get it. They were just like, oh, that's cool. You get to go to that thing. And I'm like, bro, do you not understand what I just said to you? Like, this opportunity is huge for me right now. Like, and to your point, man, everybody's journey is their own. So don't compare yourself to others, because comparison is the thief of joy, and it will sidetrack you and derail you in a heartbeat if you are comparing yourself or looking at others with envy. And be grateful for where you're at and what you and really give yourself credit for being more than capable, even though you may not think so.
yeah,
I think I 1,000% agree with what you're saying,
definitely.
man.
You get a bunch of billionaires in the room and ask them to speak honestly, and ask them about self-limiting beliefs or imposter syndrome. Every single one of their hands is going to go up, even to the day where they've got $1 billion in the bank. Those people, it's just a human nature thing. So you just have to learn how to combat it, and how to learn how to surround yourself by people that'll help kind of lift you out of that and help you see the way.
And I think the only difference between you and those billionaires in the room is they did the work. They
right.
didn't
That's,
quit.
that literally is
Right,
it.
because ultimately we can all get there. I really believe that. Some faster than others, for sure. Diamond Sharp will probably be $1 billion company way before the strategic veteran is. That's fine. I'm not in it to make $1 billion. I'm in it to help 1 billion veterans. If you told me that, that would be great. Like, I don't even know if there's 1 billion veterans left out there. But Tony, tell everybody where they can connect with you and learn about Diamond Sharp Capital so that they can follow your journey. If they want to invest with you, tell them about that. I know that just went live not too long ago, right?
Yeah, so we have our website is live now, so just www.diamondsharpcapital.com. You can find a lot about what we do on there in general terms. I post a lot on LinkedIn. That's the main source of content right now, where I'm putting a lot of educational stuff, a lot of just teaching people how this syndication and multifamily investing goes. So if you want to find me on there, it's a great place to kind of just catch a ride and see what it is that we're talking about and how this stuff works. I would love for anybody to reach out and jump on a call if you have questions. If any of this piqued your interest and you're real estate minded or you want to know more about it, please, no obligation. I'm not trying to sell you nothing. Just call me and I'll give you some free tips and hints on how to get this stuff started and help crack the nut. So LinkedIn, we've got our website. We've got a Facebook business page that went live not too long ago as well. So you can find us on Facebook. But really, that's really it as far as social media. If you want to email Tony at Diamond Sharp Capital, shoot me an email. Yeah, let me know if you have questions or if you got anything from this that I can help with. I'd love that. And that's this journey. I'd love to help lift anybody up as we go along too, because we're at the very beginning of this thing. So I'm excited to have part 2 of this conversation, and talk about all the cool things that we built. Because we have some cool projects that I'm not like quite ready to put out there live, but we have some cool stuff going on.
Ditto. Yeah, it'll be interesting to come back to this conversation in a year, see where we're both at and what's going on, man. I think that's the best part about doing what we're doing, right? Like when you're building a business, I think you'll agree with this because we're kind of in the same spot in our businesses, I would say. But I started in November, you retired in December, so essentially you started basically the same time I did. We're in kind of the same spot, but it's like I see the trajectory now. And for the first 4 or 5 months, you feel like you're spinning your wheels and you're not going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, bam, all just the higher level problems overnight. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? But you're right, man. Dude, Tony, thank you so much for being here and joining us. I'm so grateful for this conversation and all the insights you've given us. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tony Bozzi, please don't forget to go like, subscribe, review. Answer my damn emails, please. We want your feedback, guest suggestions, better questions I could be answering. I know some of these questions are getting old because I asked the same questions of a lot of the listeners because I think they're that powerful. But please, drop us a comment on what you want to hear. Like us, go follow Tony. Tony is a very generous man. He will shout you out. I promise you. He shouts me out all the time. It's great. I love it. I really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Mr. Tony Bozzi. Thanks, Tony. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.